Are buyer personas still relevant, or is conversion tracking the key value driver for success in digital marketing? Good morning, Julius. How's it going?
Good morning, Ben. Doing well. How about you?
Yeah, doing really well, actually. I think today's episode is a special episode because we are looking back at the classic frameworks of marketing and benchmarking, how important they are today, and I think that is really something that I love.
Yeah, for sure. And I think personas, I don't know, how old is the concept? When did you start first using them?
Honestly, when I started working for an agency during my bachelor studies, I didn't really know about these concepts, even though it was quite a solid agency.
Yeah.
But it was purely digital, just conversion tracking, and it wasn't something we heard. But over the years, since within Media Charge, our clients got bigger and bigger, and we saw that more and more of these concepts came. And I think the first time I really recognized that these actually frameworks might be great value drivers was probably 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some good examples for today's episode.
Yeah, nice. No, I think even for me, I started knowing about them or even using them, I think 5 years ago. So even in classical consulting, strategy consulting, it started making some waves of, I guess it comes from design thinking, or what are the origins?
I think it's just from classic distribution, so marketing, sales.
Okay.
And
yeah. But yeah, I think it's a different world now, so let's discuss today. Maybe let's start with the main question. Do you think they're still as relevant today as they were 7 years ago? Or as powerful?
More than ever.
Okay.
Definitely more than ever. I see they are so important. And there's definitely, I mean, I have to explain this a little bit more in depth so that it's kind of.
Yeah.
Let's start with the opposite of working with buyer personas. Are you familiar with the so-called false consensus?
No.
That's like that's exactly the mistake that people do if they don't have buyer personas.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you know someone or the listeners know someone from their friends who started a company. And let's say you're starting a company in B2B and you have to design your website. And then a classic approach from a 20-year-old person is, I love Airbnb. Let's do the whole website in the style of Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unlikely that this branding matches the case. I mean, I think it's a great branding. No, Airbnb does a brilliant job, but they have a tonality that is warm, welcoming, joyful, all these attributes that make sense for them.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the attributes that people love. And the false consensus means you think that just because you like something or you love it, others will love it too.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take I started my company quite early, and I know a lot of friends who did that too. And when you're young, you just really say, okay, false consensus is the default mode of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
You think that this is cool, everyone thinks it's cool.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the opposite of working with buyer personas, because when you have false consensus, you don't have any empathy for the buyers.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really understand their needs, their profiles, their habits, their hobbies. You don't have an understanding of that at all. And I think start working with buyer personas, the first thing that should be clear is, what will it help?
Mm-hmm.
And it will help you to not work with a false consensus.
Mm-hmm.
I also see it at Media Charge. You probably already saw it too, that whenever you don't have a strategic approach, people start doing exactly what they think is great, and without like aligning it to a bigger strategy. And that's so I think that's starting with that, the main reason why buyer personas make sense. And now to the main question, which I wanted to answer like a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, definitely.
Over the last 15 years in digital marketing, you had very often silos. when it comes to the clients you attract, the clients you, or the leads you generate. I think e-commerce is a different, it's often a different approach, because e-commerce you can directly benchmark the checkout. So optimizing on just a return on invest might be a good idea for e-commerce. But I'm now speaking about companies that really have a longer deal cycle and maybe a sales department. And it was okay that 10 years ago, digital marketing was mostly in a silo. And the reason why it was okay for most companies was because most of the companies had early mover advantages when going digital. So they started, if you started advertising on Google Ads 15 years ago, it's very likely that the CPC was 10 cents and the return on invest was incredible. So the reason why it was successful was just because this channel was highly underutilized by competitors.
Yeah.
So for this setup, if you generate 10 leads and 9 of them are trash, but all of these leads cost you 50 euros and your average basket is 10,000 or 50,000, no one cares about buyer personas.
Yeah.
That's absolutely, it's a great channel and you really didn't need them.
Yeah.
And I saw this in a lot of companies. And I mean, now maybe you can tell me, why do you think it's a good approach now that we are 10 years later?
Using buyer personas?
Yes.
Well, the competition is much higher. The costs are much higher to advertise. So I guess you need to target only the right people and then make for those people the most effective offer that resonates with them.
That's exactly the point. And that's one thing. So you have the competition and you want to better understand how to attract ICPs. So ICP is the ideal customer profile for the listeners who are not aware of that. You only want to attract ideal profiles. And the next thing is, you don't want to trap into false consensus. So false consensus, if you have a high pressure on the acquisition cost of new leads, for example, and you have a false consensus, let's take a simple example. If you write search ads or LinkedIn advertisement and you are not familiar with the buyer personas and you're not familiar with their needs and the opportunities for them, so how would you do it? You are not the person who is actually buying it. You can only trap into... Maybe you are lucky, and I think the more you go up in the management team, if the management team is already long working for a specific company, I'm not talking about a manager who started his job yesterday, but let's say you have a founder who started the company 20 years ago. This founder will very likely, if he's still active in the management position, he will very likely know the buyer personas. Even, I mean, he's maybe not aware of the framework and he's maybe not aware of the fact that it really supports his team, but he is aware of these potential buyers, and that's very often the case why companies go quite smoothly, because there is somewhere the knowledge, but it's not written down. So, to make it short, false consensus prevention, one big point. Very important if the prices increase for digital marketing, and secondly, targeting the right audience, so you will not spend any budget on. I mean, you can just take LinkedIn. If you have if you create an audience based on a very good buyer persona list, you will have a brilliant audience. If you create it based on gut feeling, you will probably spend 50% of the budget for literally non-relevant. Hey everyone, do you enjoy today's episode? Hit the subscribe button and support us with your subscription. We really appreciate your support. And now let's go back to the episode.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I guess maybe we can make it a debate, but I guess the contrarian take is that yes, you need to think of who is actually a customer, what are his needs, but then in like the day-to-day operations, some would say it's a new, more modern world now. We have so much user behavior on websites being tracked. We have these super advanced algorithms by Google, Meta, etc. Is it maybe too much of a strategy exercise that doesn't actually still hold as much value compared to just, I don't know, letting the algorithm do its thing? And because users are complex, I guess, like not personas tend to put people into boxes of
They do,
this
absolutely.
is this is that, this is that. But some people maybe are somewhere in between or have multiple use cases. So I guess maybe sometimes it makes sense to go more by use cases or user. What do you think about this modern
I agree.
approach?
So in general, I think that you have to go these ways simultaneously. So you should have a proper tracking setup. You should be able to track specific signals if you have a long deal cycle and all these things. And it's also not optimal to always, put, let's say, leads in a basket or put specific people in a buyer persona basket. But you will sharpen the empathy of your team with these personas, and it's able to communicate your audience very easy. Let's say as a client you want to collaborate with an agency, it's so much easier to send them the buyer personas and say, well, now you can understand our audience much better, compared to you're sitting in a meeting and you explain them roughly what's the goal. For some channels they are more important, for others they are less important. So I would say for classic pull marketing strategies, so for Google search and for Google search, well, no, I don't. That's not true. Actually, also for Google search, it's super important. I mean, you can be way too generic, or you can use specific terminology of a buyer that is only common to use from him. So, no, I would say they are just important for all channels.
So for you, the key is always to, I guess as you said, the most important was empathy, putting yourself in the shoes of the customer, and then from there thinking, okay, how can I solve his problems? What does my solution bring to him? Instead of approaching him directly, hey, you are a private equity professional, we have great private equity tools.
I think the way you describe it is mostly suitable for a classic B2C case. You have one person, you explain one pain, you explain one solution. In B2B, you should consider that there is a buying committee at the end, and the pain of one isn't the pain of the next one. So the pain of a marketing manager, he is not interested in reporting all day. That's his pain. The pain of his manager is he's not interested in reading it all day. And the pain of the CEO of the company is he wants his marketing department to spend more time on developing campaigns and not on reporting. So you have three different personas in this case. I mean, it's actually the same company, but they are all part of a structured decision process. And you have to explain to all of them why it's a valuable approach to work with your new BI software. So that's more or less the example that explains that only considering one person to explain, okay, buy this or that, it's probably not, for B2B it's not the right approach.
Yeah.
For B2C it sometimes makes sense, depends on the product.
And is there a way for, maybe if we take a very large organization with a very different set of stakeholders that are involved in the buying process, do you tend to create persona for every one of them, or does it also make sense to more go around their problems, cluster, like how do you cluster them most optimally so you don't end up with 10 personas? Or do you think it still makes sense to just create 10 personas?
You can have 10 personas. I think it always depends on the product. But in general, the like let's call it the base case should be that you have very common scenarios with these personas. So if you create one persona which is I don't know, your grandmother buys a B2B product because she, I don't know, it's not common, so you shouldn't do that. Typically you can back engineer these personas quite well if you have a sales department. So initially when you start a company, you should define these personas, and they are often defined on either market research. So how does it look if you start your own company? I highly recommend everyone to start with interviews, to really interview potential buyers and ensure that you understand their pains, so the pain points, ensure that they are interested in the solution, and then you have a very crystal clear image of who is the buyer actually, or who is the decision maker. And the funny thing is, I already saw a lot of companies, specifically startups, they just took mainly the names of the people they did interviews with. So these buyer personas were real people, which is great because it gives you like a good anchoring of the truth that is on the market at the moment.
Yeah, and so the whole person attached to it.
But interviews and the real world competition are two different things. So I would recommend, after setting them up one time initially, starting a company, or for mature companies or enterprises, to rework or to revise these documents from time to time. And this is actually perfectly done within a workshop between marketing and sales. So you cluster the leads that have been generated, you cluster the deals that have been closed, you cluster the deal sizes, you try to find patterns, and based on these patterns you go into the specific contacts and decision makers. And sometimes it's necessary to go even to kind of look behind the contact person, because typically the sales department is in touch with one person or with two. And let's go back to the reporting software that we just had as an example. It can be that the sales department is constantly in touch with the manager. But the decision maker is actually the CEO, and the user is actually let's say the junior. And there's also a good likeliness for false consensus if you only focus on what the sales manager said, then, because he will say, I only speak with marketing managers, no one else is important. So it should be just one view. The other view should again be interviews, so that you ask buyers, or I always prefer also to ask non-buyers. So if you're losing a deal, to really understand better what was the reason for losing the deal, who made the decision. Of course, incentivizing these people is quite hard.
Yeah, no. The mistakes that our clients do when starting out with personas, when setting up, apart from what you've just mentioned, maybe being too generic, or I guess the last point was around being or looking too much at your historic customers and not new customers. How do you find maybe new personas that you haven't sold to before?
That's a very, very tricky question, and it starts typically with a hypothesis. So the main question was the mistakes you can do. The mistakes you can do is, again, false consensus. if you just sit in an office and you say, "Oh, I'm the marketing manager. I'm going to write the buyer personas now," you are completely isolated from the world. That's a very bad idea. You should talk to sales. You should talk to real clients. You should, best case, also talk to those who didn't want to work with the company. And you should dig very deep into these accounts. Actually, it's not just specific people; it's accounts. So that's the biggest mistake in creating buyer personas. And
how do you find new new personas? Do you just take a whiteboard and like
okay, got it.
instead of historic ones, or we've always sold to these types of people?
So you can start with a hypothesis. That's a great
strategy, or
that's a great starting point. You say, okay, we think that there is another, and then you basically do exactly what you did when starting the company.
Yeah.
You just say, okay, we have the hypothesis. There is this audience. We don't have to invest 500K to find it out. We can just speak to these people and say, okay, is this really your pain point? Can we maybe create an interesting offer for you? Of course, there might be potential buyer personas that are in the field of an hypothesis that are not able to answer these questions. Let's take the CEO of an enterprise. He is not able to answer the question if the BI reporting tool for marketing is something he would consider.
Yeah.
But he is just at the end of the day not the real buyer. He is just part of the decision. He's the one who's interested in making his company more efficient. So you should ask him a specific question tailored to that instead of asking, are you interested in using this reporting tool? No, he's not. And then of course validating it again.
Yeah, maybe last question. I think I understand it quite well now. Once you have your personas, you know who they are, what attributes do you think are most important to then target them on, for example, Google? So what is most important? Is it job title? Is it industry? What attributes would you prioritize?
So the example Google is, I think it's a bad example because on Google you don't have a lot of possibilities to really target very granular. You have some, but not a lot. In general, having the buyer personas as concrete as possible is a great thing. There might be some attributes that are very specific and you're not sure if they are like really suitable for all of these, let's say, people who fit in this pattern. But it enhances the empathy you can have. Let me just give you one example. If you say, okay, think about you in the role of a fire department manager.
Yeah.
So you can maybe think of, I don't know, maybe I have some people in my fire department, I have some cars there, and that's it. It's very rough. But when the description is a lot more concrete, say your hobby is you really like Formula One. You watch Formula One every Sunday. I hope it's Sunday when it takes place, but
usually, yeah.
And you have 4 children, and they are all at the age of 3 to 10, and I mean that's very, very concrete. But what you will recognize is that the way how you can empathize the role, it gets a lot easier. You can feel a lot better the pains, and maybe the pain of this person is then you have a lot of work at home with your family. You're not paid well because the fire department manager is not the richest in town, and you can you really get a holistic feeling of the pains of this person. And maybe that's the best example to really consider it like it.
Okay. I think that answers all my questions. I think it was more of a educational theory episode today, but really nice.
Thanks a lot for the episode.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, have a great day.
See you next week.